We've been taught to be suspicious of pleasure, to see it as indulgence, temptation, and weakness, something to control, suppress, or even feel ashamed of. But in Tantra, especially in its deeper esoteric forms, pleasure is not a distraction from the spiritual path because it is the path. This is not because pleasure itself is the ultimate goal, but because it holds the raw energy needed for transformation. See, every spark of desire, every pulse of longing is a flicker of the goddess Shakti, which is the divine creative force. It is not something to be feared, but it is something to be refined. Just like in alchemy, where the base metal isn't simply tossed away, but it is heated, it is transmuted, and then finally turned into gold. Your pleasure is the starting point of something that is higher. Your pleasure is the prima materia of your inner fire. Tantra doesn't divide the body and the spirit into enemies of one another because it weaves them together. It says that your ecstasy is holy, your body is a temple, and your orgasm, your longing, all of these are invitations. They are portals not to lose yourself in, but to find yourself more fully, to step into the fire willingly and be changed by it. Because here is the secret that most traditions won't actually tell you. What you repress owns you, but what you consciously engage with becomes your ally. Hence, pleasure, when met with presence, becomes your power. And when you fuse this with your intention, it becomes transformation. And when rooted in your heart, it becomes love in its most luminous form. Somewhere along the long winding road of history, the Kama Sutra was reduced to something that it was never meant to be. It was reduced to a curiosity, to a list of strange positions, to a taboo conversation starter at dinner parties. But this couldn't be further from its original purpose. The Kama Sutra belongs not to pornography, but it belongs to the sacred sciences of embodiment. And at its heart is a very simple, radical truth. Pleasure is not the opposite of the divine because it's one of the most powerful expressions of the divine. Kama is one of the four purusharthas, or life aims in Vedic philosophy, and this sits alongside dharma, which is your duty, and artha, which is prosperity, and moksha, which is liberation. It does not sit beneath them, it is not in conflict with them, but it sits with them. These aren't competing values, they are interconnected currents that, when we balance them, lead to our wholeness. But in the modern world, karma has been isolated. Karma has been treated as something that is base, that is indulgent, and even dangerous. And that is exactly how power is kept out of reach from people. Because when you cut somebody off from their pleasure, you cut them off from their sovereignty, you cut them off from their instinct, you cut them off from the higher intelligence of their own body. The Kama Sutra understood this perfectly. It teaches not just about the art of intimacy and being intimate, but also the art of presence, how to eat with devotion, how to dress with awareness, how to even move, speak, and touch with elegance, with sensuality, and with intentionality. The Kama Sutra is a book about being fully alive, being fully conscious, beautifully so. This is where its teachings converge with Tantra, because both invite us to return to our bodies, not to be consumed by it, but to become more deeply rooted in our own divinity. In this worldview, the body isn't an obstacle on the spiritual path, because the body is the path. Every sensation becomes a doorway, and every pulse becomes a prayer. Every sacred union becomes a ritual. So when you make love consciously, when you allow pleasure to be sacred instead of shameful, you are not falling off the path, you are merely stepping into it, and you are stepping into it with your whole being. Pleasure becomes your presence, desire becomes your devotion, and the body becomes a temple for something that's far greater than itself. This isn't about indulgence for the sake of indulgence, but ultimately, this is about integration. It's about living in a way that doesn't split spirit from flesh, but it honors both equally and ecstatically so. Not all Tantra looks the same, and not all fire is used in the same way. What most people think of as Tantra in the modern West is often just a fragment, a watered down echo of the deeper streams that flow through this ancient path. But within traditional Tantra itself, there are two primary currents. These are two branches from the same sacred tree. We have the right hand path, which is called Dakshinachara, and then the left hand path, which is called Vamachara. These are not in opposition with one another, they are simply in a dialogue. They represent two ways of working with the same divine force. These are two alchemical routes to your awakening. The right hand path is the more internalized path and also the more symbolic route. The right hand path emphasizes discipline, it emphasizes meditation, mantra, visualizations, and spiritual unity through the subtle body. It often avoids literal sexual rites, preferring to sublimate that energy through breath and through mental focus. In this path, the fire is contained, refined, and ritualized. It teaches you control, purity, and elevation through restraint. But the left hand path walks straight into the forbidden. It doesn't seek to escape the body, but it seeks to sanctify it. This is the path of the shadow, of integration, of dissolving boundaries between the sacred and the profane. This path embraces rituals that others fear, including sexual union, menstrual blood, meat, wine, or other taboo acts. Not for shock, but because nothing is rejected on this path. Everything becomes a tool for your liberation. Where the right hand path simply lights a candle in the temple, the left hand path sets the temple on fire and then calls that blaze divine. In the left hand Tantra, the sexual act itself isn't symbolic, but it's sacred reality. The body of your lover becomes the body of the goddess. The sweat, the moan, the trembling, all of these are not just chemistry, but it's alchemy. Shiva and Shakti merging through song and heaven descending into flesh, time dissolving into eternity. But make no mistake, this isn't hedonism. It's not a license for your ego or for chaos. The left hand path demands even more precision, even more presence, and even more surrender. Because you are not just playing with energy here, but you are actually invoking a deity. You are dancing with the primordial fire. And whichever path you choose, whether you sublimate or consummate, what matters most is your consciousness. The sacred doesn't live in the act itself, but it lives in your intention, it lives in your awareness, and ultimately it lives in your devotion. Because in both of these paths, in left hand and right hand Tantra, the ultimate goal is the same. It is to remember that you are not just human reaching for the divine, that you are the divine awakening within your human form. If you've watched my previous videos, then you've probably heard the basics. The breath is the bridge, the bandhas are locks that redirect energy, and the microcosmic orbit moves that energy up your spine and then back down again, turning what might have been a fleeting release into the rising tide of power. These are the foundations of this practice. And yes, they do matter. But if you've already begun this work, then it is time to go even deeper, not just into what you do, but into how you hold it. Because the breath alone won't change you. Circulation itself is actually not transmutation, it's just circulation. For true alchemy to occur, energy must not only move, but it has to evolve. This is where most teachings stop. But Tantra doesn't stop here. In the deeper layers, it's not just about retention here or redirection, but it's actually about purification through your presence. Every breath becomes a filter, every moment of stillness is a crucible, and the ultimate question becomes, what kind of energy are you circulating? If you bring lust, fear, or ego into your breath work, then you amplify these things. But if you bring devotion, awareness, and surrender, you refine it. You change its very texture, and it stops being sexual energy in the ordinary sense and it becomes sacred radiance. So, this is where deity comes in. In traditional tantric practice, energy is not moved in a vacuum, it is guided by archetype. You might invoke Shiva as stillness or Kali as fierce transformation. You might even visualize Lalita Tripura Sundari, the goddess of supreme bliss, enthroned within your actual heart. Or you might breathe with the rhythm of the Yoni Mudra, returning your awareness inward until your body becomes the shrine and your energy itself becomes the offering. This isn't just about what you feel in your actual body, but it's about who you become when you channel it. The pleasure that you awaken through breath is no longer just yours alone because it belongs to the divine. It's the incense of your devotion and it is the currency of your surrender. So let your breath move, let the circuit flow, but let your intention itself anoint the energy. Let your devotion shape the fire, because without devotion, energy is just heat. But with devotion, it becomes light. Sexual alchemy isn't just something that happens on the mat or in the breath or perhaps between the sheets, but it is something that begins to shape your presence subtly at first and then unmistakably. When you no longer chase pleasure, but when you decide to embody it, and when you no longer leak energy, but when you circulate it consciously, when you no longer seek validation, but when you radiate from within yourself, when you do these things, something changes. This is the moment that you stop practicing alchemy and when you start becoming the alchemist itself. It's not about how much energy you hold. It's about how refined, how clear, and how intentional that energy is. You can walk into a room and say nothing, nothing at all, but your energy will speak. It will ripple out of you. It will either draw people in or it will repel them. Not because you're trying to manipulate it, but because you've become a vessel for something that is coherent, luminous, and whole. And that is what real magnetism is. Real magnetism is not about charm, it's not a technique, but it is the result of inner union, of fire and of stillness, of the sacred masculine and feminine who are no longer at war within you, but dancing. This is why Tantra doesn't end in the bedroom, it simply begins there. But it wants your whole life, it wants every conversation, because every conversation becomes a transmission, every relationship becomes a crucible, and every moment becomes a choice. Will you leak your energy or will you contain it? Will you react or will you transmute? Will you forget or will you embody? To become the living alchemist is ultimately to walk through the world as a temple in motion. It is to love with awareness and to speak with resonance and to meet each day not with control but with conscious command. And if you've made it this far, then you probably already feel it. The subtle shift, the awakening, the fire rising, not just through your spine, but through your entire life. So please take this work with you, breathe it into your rituals, and let it shape your words, your gaze, your art, and your desires. You are not just here to experience pleasure, but you are here to turn it into power. If this sparked something in you, then please like, subscribe, and share this with somebody who's ready to reclaim their own sacred fire. Please let me know in the comments what resonated the most or what you are still curious about. And if you want to go even deeper, I've created exclusive content for you on my Patreon. That is where the raw, unfiltered transmissions live. You'll find guided practices, extended breakdowns, and a growing community of mystics walking this path together. I'm also working on 2 videos for my Patreon on the subject of Tantra and sexual energy. The link will be below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.